There's so much BS out there, right? Like there's this thing called the 2% rule. It's in the freaking Dietary Supplement Act. And it's like, if your product contains less than 2% of the recommended daily amount, you don't have to put it on your label.
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Veneri. Today I'm joined by Jeff Byers, CEO of Momentous. In this episode, we talk about fixing the broken supplement industry. Jeff details the company's mission to democratize high performance. Plus, he explains how Momentous partnered with the Department of Defense, pro sports teams, and experts like Andrew Huberman. Let's get into it. Today's episode is brought to you by EGYM. EGYM provides fitness and health facilities with smart workout solutions built on its ecosystem of hardware, software, and partners. But it's more than cool tech. Their connected training experience delivers business results while helping members reach their wellness goals. If you run a gym, health club, YMCA, or any kind of fitness facility, you should check them out. Visit egym.com to learn more. Hey, Jeff, welcome back to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe.
It's been a few years, probably longer. I think I was looking back at the archives. It was 2021. We were chatting offline and kind of joking. It was in a whole different world then, and in a whole different world for you at the time. Amp Human CEO, primarily focusing on PR lotion, have since merged and became Momentous. So that deal takes place. Maybe let's kind of start there with a quick intro, and just before we get into how that transpired, like your background, what you're doing today, and then we'll get into like the kind of details of how that transition took place.
Yeah. So, hey, everybody, Jeff here, CEO, co-founder of what is now Momentous. My background, I played in the NFL for a handful of years. After retiring, I jumped into the finance world pretty quick, realized it wasn't for me, and I was really wanting to build, team, execute. I joined an early stage biotech in 2015, and there they had a really incredible technology that they were using in pharma, and there was this idea of what if we could use it outside, and that was the genesis of what you called Amp Human. I acquired that technology with my co-founder, and we spun it out of the biotech in the middle of 2018 with this idea to create kind of we call that, we looked at our first pitch deck a couple of weeks ago. It's like the next great high performance company. And it's like, what the heck does that mean? I don't know, but it was super broad. Let us go into a lot of places. But PR Lotion was incredibly unique. And I think for us, it turned out to be a much smaller market than we thought, but it was an incredible springboard for our business. And what it did was it did thrust us at the forefront of high performance. We've got clinical published work on it, but it thrust us into the most elite places in the elite performers in the world. We were working with SOCOM, Special Operations Command, Tour de France winners, marathon world record holders, things like that, and a ton of professional and college sports teams. And it just put us in a really unique place. We all thought the consumer market was going to be a lot bigger, right? And you kind of go through this and you figure it out, but we never wanted to start as a supplement company or a nutrition company from that standpoint. And part of it was my experience as an elite athlete, of what I had. But as an elite athlete, one of the things I realized, like the amount of money that I have spent or consumed in my category over my lifetime is incredibly high. Copious amounts of protein, more than that, like dump trucks loads full of protein powder, I'm sure, and muscle milks and everything you can ever imagine. But when I retired, I really was a pretty confused consumer. And I didn't know where to go. Like I always had access to the best minds that were like getting you in the best products and that were right for you. But the supplement space as a whole, I didn't really ever find a brand that I related to. And there's some really great high quality brands that I had used when I played, right? And I bought from, but nobody was like helping me think about my goals or my problems, or really connecting with me as a human. And I also just like, we all know, like the supplement space is a wild west. There's not a lot of regulation. There's very little barriers to entry. And it was just something that I was not looking at being ever. And it's funny, we had a board meeting in 2020 and before COVID hit, and it was like, hey, we should expand into supplements. And it was like, hell no. And it was this stigma that I had. It was so broken that I had such ego that like, I don't want to be in this space. And it wasn't because I didn't love it. And I'm like, I've always been a very, very heavy user of kind of, what I call some of the core fundamentals in here. And yeah, anyways, so fast forward a little bit, COVID hit, and we were looking at like we had to figure out how to expand, right? Our LTV, our customer base, and really leverage what made us special. And our what made us special was this ecosystem, this access to some of these people that very few brands or like up and coming brands ever get to. And what PR Lotion did was it put us in the room with everybody. And then it just kind of like, there's a huge problem in this category and we can fix it. And so we started thinking about building ourselves, launching, right, recovery protein and a like a hydration product and all of that. And what I soon found was is actually really easy to launch a product and really hard to do it really good. And I had this epiphany one morning. It was, we're going to really be disingenuous to our ecosystem if we just launched another Me Too product. And I was really fearful that if we just went in and launched another protein powder and we knocked on some NFL team door that was a customer of PR Lotion and said, hey, we got a protein powder, buy it now, that it was actually going to do a lot of damage to our ecosystem. So anyways, we kind of went through that. We started building our own, was really worried about it. But we had actually won a government contract, an innovation contract to develop a new collagen product. And that kind of gave us some more confidence. And then was talking to one of the board members at the Momentous brand. Project One is underlying entity behind it. And it was, hey, they were kind of looking. And Momentous was super special because it was born in pro and college sports and had really unprecedented traction in the elite locker room, especially around like right, the protein powders, a whey isolate, a plant-based, a collagen, creatine, and they kind of had the core, what I would call like sports nutrition powders, and they crushed in the locker room. And it was like, oh, like this could be super interesting. They'd figured out the supply chain, figured out manufacturing in a way, and could accelerate. And also super genuine into what they were doing in the space. And so we started talking, and Amp Human ended up acquiring Momentous, and we merged two businesses together in July of 21. And bringing the two companies together is still one of the most challenging things I've ever had to do as a human. My co-founder and I, Erica, who's the president of the organization today, it was really hard to bring together, and it was a year slugfest, and basically took us to middle of 2022 to really get through the integration of the two businesses. But the idea that we had was we could leverage some of our really unique relationships that we had and we had developed. But PR Lotion was never enough for them. But PR Lotion gave us a differentiator of like, we are doing things different. We are investing in clinical research. We are working with the Department of Defense, right, with special forces. And that was kind of the thesis there. And that PR Lotion plus Momentous could do a lot. I also was starting to get to know some people in the space, Dr. Huberman and Andy Galpin, and they were really interested in what we were doing. And it was a really springboard, the acquisition and of the Momentous brand, to start partnering with some of these folks that were looking for a partner and I would say a nimble partner in the space as well that was trying to do it very differently, and was really focused on the ecosystem. I'll say the thing. So that was middle of 2021 where we merged two companies. Middle of 22 is when we really started to see synergies. So I would say from middle of 21 to middle of 22, the business flatlined, right? Like we didn't grow, and we spent money bringing the two businesses together. Was more money than we thought, right? Cycled through a ton of people. I would say my biggest learning in all of that is we tried to merge two cultures together and kind of like blend them. And there's a winner and a loser. Merging two cultures means you have no culture. And it was like, I say like, what is one of my biggest failures is trying to appease two cultures. And it's just like, and now we have really focused on that, Erica and I, of like, let's build what we want, not what was here before. Let's like don't care how we did it at Amp Human or the original Momentous. This is Momentous, and this is the way. Anyway, so 2022, and we launched a ton of products around our scientific advisory board, which includes some big names and influencers in the category, and really went on a crazy ride from 22 to now, where we essentially doubled the business from 21 to 22, and then almost 4x the business from 22 to 23, and on track to likely double or more again this year, as long as we can keep things going. And it's been a crazy ride, and really exciting, and we've really positioned ourselves pretty uniquely in the category. But it's been a lot of fun and very challenging at times, but also I think fundamentally we have a really big mission, and I think we can help create some change in this world, and with some other great brands, clean up the category.
When you go back to, you mentioned, so you have PR Lotion, you have the established relationships and, Department of Defense and NFL teams, and even your kind of biotech background, which is much different than supplement industry background, and seeing this opportunity in supplements to kind of broaden what you were going after to really serve the customers that you already had. How far down the path did you get of developing and launching your own stuff, or even talking to other companies to acquire or partner or merge? Or was it, hey, this kind of the Momentous thing kind of just kind of happened and you ran with that? Like, was there a whole diligence M&A process, like thinking, evaluating other companies, or was it this one opportunity?
No, we looked at a bunch. We didn't look at very many supplement companies. Like we looked at hardware, software, device. Like we went. It was my ego, right? Of like, I don't want to be a supplement company, right? Because I did not think highly of the category, and it took me a while to be like, because I don't want to be it means I need to be it, because we can create change and we can change it. Like it was almost like filling this need of like it's inside me. Like, I don't want to do it because I don't like it. And it's like, well, cool. I can go do it, and we can do it better than it's ever been done, and take the work of great brands and great companies and springboard on top of it and bring everybody with us. Like, we can do it. So we did look at another company. We ended up, it was more in the nutrition space. We ended up not winning the deal, which was amazing, because we kind of learned a little bit about M&A and button up and questions and ask, because we did it all ourselves, which is very unique. I would say, I don't know, we were small enough. And my co-founder's she worked at McKinsey and Company, and is way more organized and process driven, and has been through M&A, as a consultant from McKinsey and Company, many of times where I've never done it. So it made it easier on us. But yeah, I mean, the Momentous deal was awesome and was really hard. Learned a lot. They had an incredible board, incredible investors, and Matt Wan founded it and really gave us an incredible platform. Gave us right. We acquired and merged an incredible platform via him. So yeah, we looked at a couple deals, but you didn't get in. Nothing really made sense, and Momentous worked out, and it was just kind of a perfect match in it. But it was rocky. It was rocky after putting the two businesses together.
For sure. I want to talk about that a little bit. We knew we still know the Momentous team and before the merger happened, and they had built this super high quality, very well respected and almost to a fault. Like, we're going to maintain this quality, even if it's super expensive, even if we're not able to kind of break through into the consumer category in the same way, because it was used among athletes, especially those who have like rigorous testing standards and things like that. So being able to kind of acquire and then move it in this direction of like a consumer product is huge, to the extent that you're comfortable talking about it, because this is a question that comes up too around like M&A. Was that you're financing the whole deal, you're coming together and it's just mutually agreed upon, they retain upside, like, without getting into too many specifics, is it like you had to go out and like get this financing to make it work, or did you do this with like capital already on hand? It can go a lot of different ways, obviously.
It was a very weird time environment in middle of 22, right? COVID, or middle of 21, sorry. COVID was still ripping and alive. And the markets weren't incredibly open, I would say, like on that. And so looking back on it, if I ever do this again, I will 1000% raise capital and do a cash deal. Right. And I say that for a couple reasons, right? Like bringing two business together. So we did an all equity deal, right? Comes with its challenges, right? And Ampuman and Momentous both had two very different visions, right? And the investor bases were very, very different and invested in like early companies, right? You bet a lot on the CEO and the exec team and all of that. And so like just different. And so we did an all equity deal, and therefore, right, there was retained control and in board seats, and just a misalignment in terms of what is the vision that we can do. And then from the Amp Human side, we were a consumer biotech company, like totally different than nutritional and dietary supplement company on that. And so, yeah. So, anyways, negotiated, an equity deal in there, and ultimately, what if you fast forward, call it two years and some change, I ended up we ended up raising capital last year to basically buy out a bunch of investors that were original Amp Human and Momentous investors, right? Solely because people have been in business for a little bit of time, but also a really, to make sure we drove an aligned investor base in the business. And an aligned investor base and aligned board is incredibly critical when you're growing really fast and have like the same expectations on what the company could become. So, some of the challenges of 2022 and early 23 were like Momentous had become a very different company than what people had invested in Amp Human or the Momentous brand. And we were doing very different strategy than original investors had thought. So why we're doing it again is because now I understand the impact and the that alignment can have in a good and a bad way in there. And, all the investors, have great intentions, et cetera. But I don't like, I started a very different company than the company is today, like very different. Like we were consumer biotech, like cutting edge clinical research. I didn't even like, my instinct was no on this category. And it took me realizing my no actually meant it needed to be a yes. And there was a huge need to do something special here. And what Matt Wan, the original Momentous, founder, Project One founder, did was he created a platform that I saw the ability to do something super special with, combined with the access that the Amp Human brand had.
It's hard enough running one company and going from zero to whatever and managing one cap table and investors and interests and all these things, and having to do it twice with two, different approaches and both at the earlier stage. Like, yeah, it's crazy. I can only imagine. And you mentioned, having to kind of navigate this and rebuild the culture and cap table and a lot of these, the vision and mission, as one of the more challenging things you've ever done. How do you go about doing that? Because obviously you make the deal and you want to get things going. And you mentioned even during this period, like just trying to figure it out, sales kind of flatline. Like, how do you go about saying, hey, everyone, you come from this, an NFL elite background, team and all these culture sorts of things. What was your kind of rallying speech, like pregame speech to them as you get in there? And how did it go from, okay, this is the transition to like, this is, we're running full speed and like it's working?
I think, it took us about 9 months, right? Post the acquisition to really realize like, oh, like we can't, like we can't, two's not going to win. And it's going to be like, we got to just make decisions. And that meant we lost a lot of people along the way. There was a lot like, so we had, but also that was one of the thesis, like we didn't need two teams, but we lost some of the people we wanted to keep and kept some of the people we didn't want to keep. And therefore we lost more people on that. And just like, I would say Erica and I really sitting down and say, what's important to us? What are we going to do? What is this business? Right. Not what other people are saying. Oh, this is what we did in the past. Right. And it was almost one of these things of like, right. If somebody came to us like, well, this is how we did it. Like if there was nothing else beyond that, it was like automatic, like boom. Right. Like I didn't want to hear this is how it had been done before. I wanted to say, this is how it had been done before. And this is why we believe it should work going forward. But not just let's do what we did in the past, because we were a fundamentally different company. And so I would really say, for us, it really took us to like middle of 23 to really hit our stride. It may be early, this time a year ago, to really start hitting our stride from a culture perspective, from hiring, right, getting the right talent in the team, getting the right cultural fits in the team. And it meant we had a lot of people, right, in 2022 kind of transition in and out of the business, which was super, super hard. And it's hard on any company. It was hard on us, all while growing like crazy, as well. And, I would say what we've done really good now, we've been very like, our values are front and center. We talk about them a lot, right? We judge people on them first. And we really adopted conscious leadership as an executive team. And if you don't know what conscious leadership is, it's basically a framework of I call it like a communications framework, and it allows you to be super open and transparent with people and openly talk about feelings. And anyways, it's been really good for us because it's allowed candor, right, and to be very important, but also reduce a lot of drama in the organization. And it's also just like standing up for what we believe in, right? Like our mission is to democratize high performance. Like, and right, like there's some marketing talk in there because somebody got a hold of it at one point, but it's like what I saw happen in the elite levels of sports does not happen for the consumer. Right. And when I think of performance, I do not think about performance on the field. You're trying to perform every day, Joe. I'm trying to perform every day. Like I'm trying to perform at life for a really long time. And so what those learnings are very rarely trickle down. And so how do we take this performance, right, that I saw, right, access to the best minds, the highest quality products and transparency in those, right, and getting people in the right products, being like, no, you got to do that. You got to do the 80% foundational work. And part of the challenge with our industry is everybody goes to like these random things, right? And it's like, no, what is the core? What is the core? What is the core? And it's all bone crushing consistency. So that mission of like being leaders, and what made us super special was this ecosystem, right? And I call it like our high performance flywheel. And what we did was we never broke that, right? We always stayed committed to high performance and the ecosystem and the scientists and the practitioners that moved the needle. We funded clinical research. We worked with the Department of Defense to get innovation contracts and awards to develop new products. And we did advocacy work on Capitol Hill. And it's like that ecosystem is not, it doesn't happen very much in our category because it's so easy to launch brands, right? And you can get an influencer here or there, and you can get to, $5-10 million in sales. But the ecosystem is what created a very different thing for us as a brand, because our standards are incredibly high. There are other companies that have very, very high standards too when they source, certify, et cetera. Like, to me, that should be the bar everybody has to play with, but it's not a bar that can't be achieved by anybody else. It's just a bar that people don't choose to achieve. Anyway, so this ecosystem has been core and staying core to it. And that meant we sacrificed brand and a lot of things along the way. Like, I'm not a brand expert. I'm not great at brand. I'm not great at visual design, any of that. I'm like not a native e-commerce person, obviously. Like, I've learned all e-commerce kind of through hard knocks here. And we're a 90% D2C business on there and 10% pro college government sales. And so it's like a really unique approach, but we stuck toward the ecosystem and stuck core to the ecosystem. And what it did was we de-risked our category for so many of these influential figures that had never really taken a stance or haven't had the differentiation, didn't know how to talk about it, or just needed somebody to stand alongside them that was doing it differently and open to say, this category is broken. We believe we can help fix it, right? Like, we're gonna advocate on Capitol Hill and we're gonna do things to help make it better in that. So anyways, I think that was a big thing of like, that made us special. Not everybody believed, right? Because that model, that investing in clinical research, investing in advocacy, investing in certification is not the model that a lot of companies follow in our space. And it's not the easy model. It's expensive, really, really expensive.
The Fit Insider Podcast is brought to you by our friends at EGYM. This is an exciting partnership for us, and not just because EGYM makes some of the most innovative fitness products out there, but because the entire EGYM team, led by their CEO Philip, is committed to making health, fitness, and well-being more accessible for everyone. And that's a mission we can get behind. By combining their smart equipment with integrated software and hundreds of connected partner brands, EGYM helps fitness facilities stand out by delivering a personalized, gamified workout experience that improves outcomes and member engagement. So if you're a gym or health club operator thinking about how to best serve your members while driving business results, go see what EGYM is up to at egym.com. It's interesting the obvious challenges that came along with transitioning the business and getting the culture in place. And obviously you had the experience building this ecosystem and the kind of validating the category in so many ways, even before it was a nutritional brand and platform. Then from the outside looking in, like I said, I knew Momentous. I obviously knew you, followed both of the companies, saw it come together. But then very, very quickly, even as it was difficult behind the scenes to get all the pieces in place, out in the world, out in the wild, it was like Momentous blew up. It was everywhere. Huberman's talking about it. I know Andy Galpin also, and having very legitimate figures because you had already done this kind of work of building the platform and the trust now associated with the brand. Like I said, it blew up. So as that happens, it was kind of like, whether you were ready or not, you're out there and you're doing it. How did you mentioned kind of earlier on that you had already been talking to Huberman and you obviously had these relationships. When did it get to that point that you could say like, hey, let's work together?
Yeah. Partnerships always evolve over time and what that is. But, Andrew and I started as just a relationship, right? And we had a very our Venn diagrams of relationships crossed big. And so we knew a lot of the same people, and I think that drove a lot of trust. And we talked, the merger happened, and it was like, hey, we have a platform now that is bigger, and it took a long time to pull that to life. And the partnership is ever evolving in here, and yeah, I mean, like, I'm incredibly honored and proud to work with Andrew and Rob Moore on here. But it was like, it was about designing products and making sure that we had the right standards that were there. And then also, really, it was about the ecosystem of like, are we going to be able to build an ecosystem in a meaningful way around? Because the one thing that the Huberman Lab never wanted to do, right, was they didn't want this to be their brand, right? And what made us special to them is what they believe makes us special to everybody. It's the fact that we sell into 200 pro and college sports teams. We've won 10 government contracts. We work with, now like we have all these crazy practitioners that have supported the brand, but now we have more public figures like Dr. Andy Galpin and Stacy Sims. And, now we work with Tim Ferriss and Rich Roll. And, like, it's just like all, like, we've created this ecosystem around us, which has been super, super fun on there. And like you have what's on paper, and that's one thing, right? And paper is very transactional. And the one thing I will say is anybody can put stuff on paper and be transactional. Those things don't last, right? And for me, everybody we work with is a long-term play, and maybe it's on paper, maybe it's not. Maybe what we put on paper doesn't work. And I think there's a lot of there's a lot of handshake that happens, and there's a lot of social capital that needs to occur in partnerships, like true partnerships. Like the relationships was all the result of the ecosystem and figuring out what's right and what's important to them at that time. And that also is changing, right? Like what's important and right for them in the future is not the same thing that it was a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Asking from the perspective of thinking about what moves the needle in growth and looking at someone like Hubrin. Again, we don't have to get into specifics about each individual deal, but there's when you say working with Tim Ferriss or working with Rich Roll, there's like, is that like a marketing deal? Is that, do you or would you consider something like, an equity stake for people that you partner with? Is it, all these things are varied, but as I step back and think, there's influencer led brands and athlete brands. Tom Brady merges with Noble and they're going to start selling supplements. And you think about where is the attention and where is the trust, and how are you building those relationships and incentivizing people in the long run. Back in the day, it was like, oh, we'll send you supplements and you talk about us on your podcast. And that evolved to affiliate deals and then rev shares and equity partnerships. I guess what I'm getting at is, how do you make sure that, like, beyond the relationship, the incentives are aligned and for the long term?
Yeah, I think that's really hard. Right. And there is no one cookie cutter approach. And you kind of said it, like it's changed over time, right? On how this happens on it. And there's always another shinier object out there, right? For somebody. And I think ultimately it's all around the intangibles that you can provide to somebody, right? Like for us at Momentous, right? What we stand for and our standards and our ecosystem builds upon itself. Like I think about AG, right? AG1 has built an unprecedented ecosystem, right? And it's almost impossible to penetrate in that. And it's incredible. And what they did was like they incentivized people the right way, but they also just created an army that you couldn't go against, right? And it's like you get critical mass that's really, really important, right? But you also continue to do the the right things over and over and over and over is super important, and you just continue to show, right? Because there is risk, right, to all of these people switching, right? And nobody wants to be the person that goes against, right, mainstream on there, unless that person that's going against mainstream is something truly special, right? That is truly, truly special and doing something very different. And so, anyways, I think, right, like as a entrepreneur, founder, CEO, and not a polished corporate exec, I think it's really easy to say, "Hey, everything needs to be buttoned up," and how do you contractually tie people to you? The truth of the matter is, if you have to worry about a contract, it doesn't matter anyways. At the end of the day. And especially like with your big partnerships, they're fluid. And you're gonna win some and you're gonna lose some. But you just hope that you can pick up and have a phone call with people and work through it, right? And understand like things change in their world and things change in your world. Like there's a time when we got to give and a time that we got to get on it. So it's hard, but also it's like those intangibles, like that to me is why the ecosystem is super important. Is how do we build the really unique things and give access and share some of our learnings that we have to these people, and then how do we listen to what they're saying and help make us better as well. So like like we've done everything from equity to rev share to just pay them to free product, right? To everything. And what you find is it's very different for every individual. Like some people want cash, some people want all upside, some people want combination. And then I think what's the most important is then you got to figure out what beyond compensation is actually important to them. Is it commitment to research? Is it advocacy? Like what gets them excited? Like what's like, and asking those questions. Like we don't work with hardly anybody's manager. We work with directly with the people, and it's really important from athletes to whatever to have those conversations, right? And say like, what's important? How do we support your mission? Because that's how you really build a deep relationship in it. It's also hard, right? For us as a brand, right? Like we have to have a broad stable because if it's like, if we're the Andrew Huberman brand or the Andy Kaplan brand, right? Just one of those, we actually don't have a ton of enterprise value, right? Our enterprise value is when we're the brand that everybody talks about.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think it's super insightful, and I appreciate you sharing that because it's something that comes up, and I think a lot of founders and entrepreneurs and CMOs and like they want the answer and like the right answer, and it's like no, it's a combination of things. It's evolving, it's fluid, and it's something that it's one lever as you describe it. Even like it's all the other things up into that point, and even beyond that. They're like, why would they care in the first place? What is that relationship like, and how do you maintain it? I think one thing down the path that's come up a couple times is not wanting to get into the nutritional supplement space and thinking about fixing or redefining a broken category. And, you know, in some ways it's been the same for a very long time. Even if quality standards improve and sourcing and transparency, as you think of now kind of having hit that stride and continuing to scale the business and having your culture in place, like what does that look like going forward as you redefine the space and hopefully define what it looks like going forward?
Yeah, I really think we have this opportunity to create like really high standards in here, and everybody can create high standards. But I would say my goal, right, is to raise the bar for supplements and right help create change, right, in regulations around that. There are some incredible brands out there that are doing this alongside us, right? I would love to figure out how we do it together. You have Ritual and Thorn and some of these outstanding AG's a great one that are doing it so good, right? But they're still all the bottom feeders, and we just got to figure out a way to do that. So I think what this category needs, right, is you're going to have your great AGs and your great elements and your great seeds and your great rituals that are very targeted when it comes to it. But ultimately, there is so much confusion in our category of like, what should I take? Why should I take it? And therefore, that leads to a lack of clarity and consistency in approach. And so, really, what we're trying to do over the next year is like, what are the three things that every human being should do, right? And then let's own a couple categories, right? What we call kind of need states, specific things in there. But let's not be everything to everybody. Let's own the 80%. Let's get the foundational right and like have a couple other areas we play in. And so let's not have a portfolio of 400 SKUs or 400 products, right? And let's have a very creative portfolio that we leverage our experts and our practitioners to build, and then say, let's get the majority of our people into the most impactful things. And those impactful things, right, must have the highest quality, the most efficacious potency, right, and transparency across what it is. And so I don't know. I just think it's a matter of how do you how do you drive trust, transparency, clarity in this process? And again, I don't think we're the only ones that can do that. I just hope we can set the bar. And I think if we can set the bar and lead the organization to do that, it's great because you said this before we start recording, right? Like quality is not really a differentiator. Anybody can produce incredibly high quality products. Right. But not everybody certifies those things. And anyways, like there's a lot of things down here where there's just like our industry is a black box. People don't share what actually happens. And I want to share that. And I want to share why I think it's fundamentally broken and why I was hesitant to get into this space on there. So I think where we go is continue to have a very curated portfolio, create standards that are unprecedentedly high, right? And help bring the industry along, continue to innovate around very unique things like we've done in the past and work with the Department of Defense for some cool product innovation, invest in research, invest in certifications, and invest in our ecosystem.
It's an interesting strategy. It'll be really cool to see it come together. And thinking back to when it was still Amp Human, you thought about a couple different categories. You mentioned, potentially hardware and looking at other devices and where you would grow. Hearing you talk about this very curated, very focused approach now, as you think about the high performance platform or democratizing high performance and all these sorts of things, it sounds like it's continuing to go deeper and deeper and focus on what really matters. And framing this up, it's like, so we shouldn't expect, data integrations, personalization X, hardware Y, like all the other things that are around this kind of category. How do you think about that?
Oh man, we've tried to go down those rabbit holes, and I don't know. I do not think that is what our sweet spot is, right? I believe there are other companies doing great things in that. Like what we do is we make the highest quality products, right? Alongside others. And what we need to do is get people in the right products, and we need to partner with the right people and the right brands that are doing those other things right. I do believe there's going to be a roll up, right? At some point, and I'm sure you guys see it too. I mean, it's happening, right? In small cases, like you see it even with right, like TB12 and Noble, right? There's going to be data integration, a wearable, right? Um, Diagnostics, a supplement company, a weight training company. They're all going to get under one roof at one point. But I don't believe, as you're building and growing a business, like if you're trying to build products and do diagnostics and do wearables, you're not going to be great at anything, right? Because the team it takes to do like what I learned, right, around specifically dietary and nutritional supplements, to do it great is really, really, really hard. There's so much BS out there, right? Like there's this thing called the 2% rule. It's in the freaking Dietary Supplement Act. And it's like if your product contains less than 2% of the recommended daily amount, you don't have to put it on your label. Right? I mean, it's insane. It's insane to me, right? I mean, I learned this talking to our co-man. We're coming out with a new product, and I'm like, it's a single ingredient product. I'm like, why does nobody have this ingredient on their product? They're like, oh, it's the 2% rule. You don't have to put it on your product. I'm like, wait, what? I didn't even know that existed. What we want to do is we want to get people in the right supplements at the right time and be in the ecosystem, be the trusted player in it, right? Like make the best protein, the best omega, right? The best creatine, certify it, be transparent, right? And then have, like I'll say we have like this, those are our three like core foundational, like that every human should be thinking about. And then like, how do we have a great product in sleep, a great product in hormone health, a great product in like kind of daily essentials, right? A great product in focus, right? Like, and then we have our athletic performance line. So it's like, how do you just do that? And like, it's like, oh, we could go into gut health, but that's a huge distraction. Like that is a data driven, or like we could do that, or we could just work with those companies, right? Because they serve a need, we serve a need. Like we're not big enough to be everything. Like we aren't. Like we can't do that. Like for me to go figure out how to do what Whoop did or Aura did, like man, I don't even know what like an engineer does. I'm like, engineers build bridges, and they're like, no, we got 50 engineers, and they just right like obviously no, but like uh joking around, but like it's like that's not our zone of genius. Our zone of genius is product, working with dietitians and practitioners and data scientists to say what are the best products, what does the research say, let's go there, and then to produce them and understand what the manufacturing looks like, how to get them to market, like where do we do things differently, to allow us to be one of the only brands sold in pro and college sports.
I think it's super smart, and both from, putting on my business hat and thinking about being the best and owning the category and doing it differently and earning the trust. And then also selfishly from my consumer perspective, being like, yeah, please, somebody just give me the things I need and don't try to sell me 400 different SKUs of all these different products. And I think a lot of folks feel the same way. So in wrapping up, for those who do want to check it out, get the products, website, socials, where's the best place to go?
Yeah. Live Momentous, ous.com. If you just put us in the old Google search and you spell it wrong, it will still show up on their Momentous. We're on Amazon as well. Lots of good info. Our LinkedIn is pretty good as well. You can find us at Momentous there. Lots of great stuff on YouTube, on our YouTube account as well. Some of our advisors, et cetera, talking about things on there. Yeah. And then I would say, always hit us. Like I'm on LinkedIn. I answer a ton of questions. Our CS team is great. We got a great director of human performance, and he gets on CS and answers tough questions all the time as well. Like now my CS team is like, Jeff, what are you doing? Don't just have random people email us, but we're trying to be super open and transparent. We don't have all the answers. We got a lot of things we want to improve on. This year is a huge improvement year for us when I think about our like continuing to optimize around our standards and transparency and sourcing and making sure like all the things we have in Google Drive show up on the website somehow. So yeah, anyways, check us out. Love us. If I would say like, what are our top products? It's our proteins, top seller in NFL and such. Our omegas, really, really good, high potency, incredibly high quality and sustainable fishery, creatine as well. And then our sleep is a really big category for us.
Awesome. We'll get everything linked up below. Thanks for making some time today and staying a little long. It was an awesome conversation.
Yeah, likewise, Joe.
One more thing before you head out. Help us spread the word. Take a minute to rate and review the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, or share this episode with a friend. And if you like conversations like this, you'll love the Fitt Insider newsletter. We send it every Tuesday. The link is in the description. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you back here next week.